Well, in today's episode, we're going to consider the topic of worry. Let me ask you a question. Do you worry? You may say, that's a dumb question. Of course I worry. Who doesn't worry? If you say no, that you do not worry, honestly, you must live in a house with no windows, no doors. You have no internet access. You have no cable TV. You can't even get the analog or digital channels with the antenna. Or you have no cell phone. You have to be completely cut off from the world, right? Not to worry. But then you would need to eat and try to figure out how to provide for yourself. And so then, regardless, worry would come in, right? So asking you if you worry is like asking you, did you eat today? You know, life offers us plenty to worry about. I mean, just look what's going on today. Just look around you just for a moment and you see multiple times a day something to worry about. If I can be honest, as I was preparing for this episode, I picked up my phone and I began to look at the news early in the morning, and I began to look a little bit at social media. And guess what happened? I began to honestly worry. Certain things began to grip my mind and begin to cause me to worry. And then if I'm not careful, I begin to get fearful and so forth. And it causes stress and different things in my life. We can begin to worry about our health. We can worry about financial situations, our future, our dreams, our job, politics, so much. It's almost like worry is just a natural part of our life, a part of our society. So it is what it is. Just deal with it, right? Well, can I say this? Worry is a huge reason that we find ourselves unable to take the next step in our relationship with Jesus Christ. It hinders us. It holds us back. It's just one of those things in our life, if we're not careful, that can prohibit us from taking that next step. So can we do something about worry, since it's just a natural, everyday occurrence in our culture and society? Is there some way to get rid of it? Can worry somehow be turned into some type of positive in our life? Well, that's what we want to look at in today's episode. So let's consider these questions. What is worry, right? Well, you say, I know it, I experience it, but what exactly is it? Well, if we were to look at a definition in a dictionary, it would say this: give way to anxiety or unease is to allow one's mind to dwell on difficulty or troubles. We're going to come back to that idea of dwelling on difficulties or trouble. That's the verb form. If it was be a noun, we're just describing it's a state of anxiety and uncertainty over actual or potential problems. And that's the problem with worry. Sometimes we're worrying about things that are not even have come to pass. They're not even present. We're just worrying about something that might be. And so sometimes we're wasting energy. Think about that. Here's words that would describe worry: trouble, bother, cause anxiety, make anxious, disturb, distress, upset, concern, fret, agitate, unsettle, perturb, frighten, alarm, scare, fluster, flurry, and stress. It would go on to say strain, harass, look at this, torment, plague, irk. But then as we end up here on the end, it says prey on one's mind, not P-R-A-Y, like we're going to pray to God, but P-R-E-Y, like an animal going after its prey. It says it preys on one's mind. It weighs heavily on one's mind. And we're going to look at this in more detail. If you think about worrying, and it's dwelling on this, all the negative, it's dwelling on all the potential problems, it's dwelling on maybe things that are real in your life. I don't dismiss that there are certain situations in our life, health, crisis, pandemic, different things that would cause us to worry. But we need to figure out what to do with that worry so we don't drown in it, so we don't trip over it, so we're not hindered in taking our next step for Jesus. So worrying is that. It's dwelling on the negative. It's parking our mind on the problems, on the troubles of life. Honestly, worry is this. It's consistently thinking. It's consistently rolling whatever the problem, the fear, whatever that is, we're just rolling around in our minds. We're playing all the negative outcomes out. We're revisiting it constantly. We're allowing it to consume our minds. That's what worry is. It's just in our minds, rotating and moving, and we're thinking and we're dwelling on it. And so worry is anxiety. I mean, that's what the definition said. And some people would say anxiety is not real. Well, then you're saying worry is not real, because worry is. And anxiety is a real feeling, a real emotion that people go through. And sometimes it can be very debilitating. And worry can do that, because worry can do this. It can begin to produce stress in our life, and stress can produce the fear, and the fear can produce lack of faith, because fear and faith are not equal with each other. And then it can cause us to begin to make bad decisions. It can begin to hinder us. It can begin to make us revert backwards or become more introverted or whatever it is. Remember, we're trying to follow Jesus. We're trying to grow in our relationship with Him. We're trying to to really step out in faith as being a follower of Jesus Christ. And if worry's there, we may not take that step. We may be fearful to take that next step for Him. And so we don't have to be consumed with worry. We really don't. The amazing thing is this: if you can worry, you can meditate. Yes, you can worry. If you can worry, you can just as easily meditate. So what do we do with worry? Well, worrying is meditating. Think about that. Remember we said when you're worrying, you're parking your mind there. You're revisiting. You're thinking about it. You're playing out the potential outcomes. You're just dwelling on it. What is meditating? You're thinking on it. You're talking about it, thinking about it, running it through your mind. You're parking your mind there. That is what meditating is. The only difference is what you're thinking on. It's how you're thinking on it. So it's a choice to worry or to meditate. To worry is a choice, to meditate is a choice. You like living in a free country, right? We like our rights. We live in the United States of America. We're the land of the free, where we choose what we want. We choose what kind of burger we want. We choose where we're going to work, what kind of car we're going to drive. We make all these choices, and we pride ourselves in that because freedom is from God. It's right. We have liberty. Your mind is also a free country. You choose what you want to think on. Nobody can ever force you to think on something. Nobody can ever force your mind to park somewhere. You or I choose where I'm going to park my mind. I choose what I'm going to think on. Somebody can influence me to think a certain way, but ultimately I make that choice. And so as it comes to worry, I choose to worry. Now, I'm not saying events are not real and stresses are not there, but when I begin to dwell on it, think on it, and not allow my mind to go somewhere else or place my mind in different places, then I allow myself to worry. I choose that. I do that. And so when we worry, it's by our free choice. It's what we choose to think on. And so 2 Corinthians 10:5, Paul said this. He said this: casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God. And watch what he says here: and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. And so the idea there is putting our thoughts in jail, us having control of our thoughts, not our thoughts just running wild, our thoughts, when we worry, our mind just goes and goes. You can lay in bed at night and you can worry yourself to death. But I choose to do that. I choose to allow my mind to go that direction. I choose to allow my mind to think on those issues, to think on that situation. And I allow myself to worry. On the flip side, if I can worry, I can meditate. And that's what what Paul, I don't know why I keep saying Jesus, what Paul emphasizes here in this passage, to bring our thoughts. And look what he says: not some thoughts, not good thoughts, but every thought to the obedience of Christ. And so we're to capture our thoughts. We're to put them in jail. We're to take control of our thoughts. So we can worry, which is meditation, about the negative, or we can meditate or think on the positive. It's our choice, but the results are drastically different. You see, the world wants to distract you. We've talked about distractions all around us, the voices screaming for our attention, the content, the media, the news. I'm sorry, but I cannot walk away from the news feeling encouraged. I don't know what it is. Some of it's just truth, facts. Some of it's portrayed to be just very negative, but I don't know that I could ever walk away from the news feeling encouraged. And honestly, there's so many times I walk away from social media not feeling encouraged as well. And so the world desires to do that. And they want us to keep worrying. That's Satan's tool. Why? Because it will do what? It will prohibit us from taking the next step. If he can get us to worry and fret and stress and lose faith and lose confidence in God, then guess what? He's got us right where he wants us. And so the world desires to distract us, to keep our attention away from the one we want to follow. So how can we apply this? Well, we began with a word last week. We said we're going to emphasize a word, and that word was what? Do you remember? If you're following along with us, it was intentional. Nothing's going to happen by accident. We're going to have to be very intentional. So as we try to apply our episodes, we want to have an intentional time towards the end, like an application time of how can we apply this. As we think that way, Philippians 4:6, you may know this verse, but it says this: be careful for nothing. He's saying there, be anxious for nothing. Or what he's saying is, don't worry about anything. But rather do this: in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. So rather than worrying, dwelling on it, thinking about all the negative outcomes, how bad it could be, stop. Remember, take your thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ and bring them. So begin talking to God about it. Begin sharing with Him. Begin sharing through prayer, through communication, by captivating your thoughts. And look what it says, in the peace of God. What's the opposite of worry? Peace. What's the opposite of anxiety? Peace. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding. Notice, remember, the worry is going on where? In our mind. And that's what it captivates our mind, our thoughts. So if we'll captivate those worrying thoughts, and we'll translate that, rather than meditating on the negative, we'll begin meditating on the positive. We'll meditate on what? On God's Word. We'll meditate on what? God's promises. We'll meditate on Jesus Christ. Meditate on who God is. Begin to meditate on who Jesus is and all that Jesus has done for us. And meditate on those promises and our bright future and all those things. You see, it's our choice. We can meditate, worry on the negative, or we can meditate and dwell on the positive. It's ultimately up to you and I. So will you worry or will you meditate? When worry comes, be intentional in flipping your mind. It's like that old adage way back in the day of say no to drugs. Maybe you and I just need to say no to worry.